this is a panel discussion with Evergreen alum to discuss what their international experiences were like, so that hopefully audiences can understand a bit more about what it's like to really study abroad. To get started though, my name is Brynn Smith and I'm the Assistant Director for International Programs and Services here at the Evergreen State College. And I'm joined by the Program Assistant Seel, along with 4 alumni of the Evergreen State College. We have Avery, Gail, Sydney, and Genevieve. As for the format, we'll spend about 35 minutes with these specific questions, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions that pop up. So with that, we'll just dive right into the first question. So we can start with Avery and then you can popcorn it to the next person. So Avery, can you tell us your name and what study abroad program or programs you participated in as an Evergreen student, when you traveled, and why you initially chose to study abroad?
Yeah, for sure. Those are great questions. So my name is Avery Azar. I use she, her pronouns. And I was a student in a program. It was a year-long program at Evergreen called Greece and Italy, or an artistic and literary odyssey with Bob Haft and Ulrika Crosscheck. And this was a program where, you would be in class with the whole cohort for, fall and then winter, and then in spring, everybody who was interested in studying abroad as a part of that program would then go to Italy and Greece. So it was about 3 weeks in Greece and a month in Italy. And I was really interested in this program in particular because I was studying architecture and literature for my bachelor's degree, and I was really focused on Gothic architecture and literature, and then also it sort of transitioned into studying the classics. And so that's where then you get this influence of like Italian and Greek architecture and how that relationship worked. And so I really love the interdisciplinary components, and Evergreen's model of hands-on learning and learning by like experiential learning is really was really attractive to me. And so and I had never studied abroad before. I'd never gone abroad before, and I was just like in my early 20s. And so I felt like I really loved the idea of having this cohort of people that I would go with abroad. And there was a lot of focus on like cultural competency of, learning together about like how to, be a good ambassador for your country, how to be a good ambassador for your college and the school. And then to learn like on site at different archaeological sites, museums, to hear directly from folks, docents, and from folks who are, have like a personal connection with the curriculum. And so, and I was very fortunate. I had an amazing, Bob Haft was like one of my favorite faculty ever. And he was just, it was a lovely person to have as a leader on a trip like that. And so really learned a lot from my experiences with everybody. And then maybe Genevieve.
Hi, so I took part in the Ireland Between History and Memory program for the academic year of 2009-2010. And I initially decided to join that program because I wanted to learn Irish. And it was the only program that I had heard of I think in the region that was teaching Irish, because, minority languages are kind of hard to find for programs. And I had also never traveled abroad, and so this was a good opportunity for that. Like Avery said, in a cohort that you were familiar with and got to spend like I think a good 6 months in class with before you all traveled abroad. And so it was a safe environment to travel abroad for the first time in, and I'm not sure that I would have been able to afford to go over to another country for a month without it being a part of my college experience. So yeah, that having that built into the program was an experience that at the time I would not have been able to have otherwise. And so it was very valuable in that way.
Great, thank you. Sydney, do you want to go next?
Yeah, totally. I studied abroad with one of the consortium schools or programs that Evergreen works with, and it was AIFS. And I went to Barcelona in like spring of 2020. So I got sent home because of COVID, but I got to be there for a while. It was like I was there for like almost 3 months, I think, but it was like a 4-month long program. It was supposed to be for like the full semester. Yeah, and it was great. I was studying at like the program AFS had like a few different schools that they had kids at in Barcelona, and they're pretty much all American kids. There was a few like other German kids and French kids. And I was at like a small like design art school in Barcelona and studying like brand design. So it was really cool, and it was cool. It was very much so separate from Evergreen, and it wasn't like Evergreen Kids, which was like an interesting experience to be just with like not only in a different culture completely, but with different, Evergreen is such a unique place. And so even the American kids I was with, it was like almost foreign and like really fun. Yeah.
And then Gail, do you want to finish off the question for us?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually in the Giallo program as well, the Greece and Italy Artistic and Literacy Odyssey. But I did it in 2018, and it was a wonderful experience, pretty much all in all. I did also have Bob Half too. I will second that. He is a phenomenal professor. It is sad that he has retired, but I hope that he comes back to teach some little classes. But I also had Andrew Reese and Amjad Farr. Amjad didn't go abroad with us. He was remained on campus for that last quarter for any of the students that didn't want to go abroad. They were able to stay on campus and do some other like class activities to continue getting that credit during the spring quarter. But yeah, it was also set up with how we had it for the whole year, and then went abroad in spring. Which was really wonderful. We did 4 weeks in Greece and 2 weeks in Italy, so a little different than how Avery's was set up. But we were studying like Greek and Italian history and mythology, and mainly looking at their art and architecture. So I was a photography student and curation. So part of what really interested me was getting to see all of that art, and just the sculptures and everything up close was just phenomenal. It was just a dream truly to come true. I initially chose the program. I actually was in the process of setting up an ILC to go to Greece on my own the year before. And then as we were kind of like getting it set up, they were like, oh, there's actually a class happening next year that has photography in it, and you can go abroad with them. And I was like, oh, that's much better. I'd rather go with other people than just kind of wander around Greece by myself. But it was cool that was still like an opportunity I could have taken if this class wasn't available. So I did really appreciate that. But yeah, I'd just always really been interested in going to Greece. My aunt went when she was in college, and it was just something that like I kind of grew up around and was really excited about. So yeah.
Great, thank you all so much. So our next question is, and this is anybody who wants to answer it, or multiple people. So the question is, can you tell us at least one thing that was unexpectedly challenging about study abroad? Looks like Andy's here to join us, so maybe Andy will have an answer. Hi, Andy.
Hello, hello.
Hi there. So actually, this is perfect timing. How about we just went around and talked about, we answered our first question. So maybe you could just finish us off, and then we can move into the second one. Is that okay? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
No, it's okay. I'll ask you the question. Can you tell us your name, what study abroad program you participated in as an Evergreen student, when you traveled, and why you initially chose that program?
Okay, so I'm Andy, and originally I go for the SIT, study abroad program. Originally, I wanted to go into SFS, which is the School of Field Studies, in order to study agroforestry or field biology, because originally my interest was actually into maintaining forests and how do you create a sustainable system. Like I want to use environmental medicine into applying it into like making your living off of your own land, living off the wilderness, learning how to survive off of what you can as a resource.
Awesome. So you did the SIT program or NSIT program?
It's actually the SIT program, and I did travel to Panama on, I believe it's January 2020 or 2021. I believe
Okay.
that's the year.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So our second question is, can you tell us at least one thing that was unexpectedly challenging about your study abroad experience?
I can go. I like briefly spoke about it, but I think what I was really not expecting was like I didn't have that much culture shock with like the culture in Spain, but with just the culture of the other American students, like other 20-year-old girls in the country, and like having to be friends with them. And I'm a pretty independent person too, so a lot of the stuff I wanted to do, I would just go off and do on my own. But then it was like, well, these things I have to do with another person. And yeah, I just wasn't expecting it to be any problem to befriend, kids from the same place. And so that was definitely a challenge, but it was really fun and interesting. And it just like added to getting to meet new people and discover more sides of the world. It was just like closer to me in the world than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Genevieve, did you have something to add too?
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, the culture shock of coming home, that was difficult. We're in these year-long programs where for like 6 months we're being prepared to be in this place. We're learning history, culture, food, poetry, literature, all of these things to really understand the people and the place that we are going to be traveling to. And so, going there felt natural and great because we had prepared ourselves for it for so long. But then coming home was a whole other experience because you really get to see home in a new way after experiencing, this other place and these other people. And for me, that was really difficult because I went to Glencolmkill in County Donegal, and that is a rural sheep village where 50 people live there. Like 50 people live in Glencolmkill and about 1,000 sheep. And it is 3 hours away from the closest hospital. And, just very remote. And you learn a different way of being. Like, whenever you see anyone on the road, you always say hi. You always wave. And then, like, coming home, it took me weeks to stop waving at people in Portland. Like, and everyone, it was just like, oh God, like, I need to stop doing that. People are gonna think I'm strange. Um, it's, yeah, I don't think we think about the coming home side of it and what that means for us, and also the kind of personal reflection and societal reflection that we get from the coming home.
Yeah, thank you so much. I agree with you. Sometimes I think it's the hardest part, but it's also the time when a lot of the learning becomes rooted in us because we are comparing it back to what used to seem normal, right? All right, would anybody else like to talk about anything that was unexpectedly challenging, or should we move on to the next question?
I definitely do have something about this.
Great, thank you.
Especially what's challenging about study abroad is being able to act as a bridge to American culture and coming back home. I agree with you, because as a immigrant myself, I'm actually originally Vietnamese. I actually immigrated to America when I was age 5. So when I go to a different country that is very similar to mine, which is a reactive culture, we tend to get along. But the one thing I find very weird about American culture, and I still have to cope with this till this day, is the amount of materialism going on. People fight over where should we wear, what should we eat, how are we in our status. We try to be better than the Jones. It's really ridiculous to me. Like, all that is redundant. Whenever I went to live with the Nassau tribe over in Panama, they were completely like, it's about learning how to live to survive. It's learning how to make enough to keep your family surviving. It's not about like using capitalism and money to actually like make yourself inflated your own ego. That's not how it's supposed to work. It's about keeping everyone alive.
Yeah, yeah. I think kind of like Genevieve talked about, the both of you talked about, it just highlights again, even more so, like the differences between places. So thank you. All right. So the third question is about money, kind of a taboo topic, but we're going to get into it. So this is for anybody who wants to answer it. So money is probably the #1 barrier for students to being able to study abroad. And that's kind of both real and perceived. It is a real barrier, and sometimes people perceive it as a bigger barrier than it is. So if you're comfortable, can you tell us how much extra it cost for you to study abroad, and how you were able to make it work financially?
Have I answer this one?
Great.
So here's basically like, how do I make it work financially? The first thing first that I will always tell people is that if you want to financially be frugal, you have to start changing your behaviors. You cannot just call yourself, oh, I'm going to be frugal, and then you go study abroad. I saw some of my friends start hanging out in bars that will cost like $34 just to get a meal. For me, I just go for any restaurants that like I can pay off $6 or $4. Or if I had to live off the indigenous culture where like they capture, like I catch my own fish to survive and to eat for free and contribute to the family, then that's what I'm gonna do. Basically, how much an extra cost would be for whenever I live in the cities, it's like 100 a week or a month or even less. But then whenever I go to the Nassau tribe, 0, because honestly, they know how to contribute. I had to learn how to get along with the people. I had to build networks, and I had to like learn how to live like what they live. Don't just try to do something the opposite. And so pretty much that's how I survived. And for me, I also had to go and do Uber Eats. I do deliveries and all that full time but at the same time, I had to like learn how to cut away all the financial bluff that I needed. No more buying extra clothes that I needed either.
Thank you. Any other ways that people were able to afford it, scholarships or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. That's so like when like I was growing up, like I would be considered low income by financial aid standards. And so basically what I sort of decided in my head, there's a scholarship called the Gilman Scholarship that's pretty common And I looked into that at the time, but usually it's not awarded for students, or I was told that like preferential treatment is not given to students going to European countries. And so I was like, well, let me actually revisit maybe like taking out loans. And so I looked into student loans. So I'd already received some scholarships and grants. So when you're talking about like studying abroad, there's like the total cost for the tuition, and then there's additional fees involved with that. You want to ask your faculty, like, are the fees covering airfare, or are the fees covering your lodging? Are they covering any of the meals? And so Bob, my faculty, he did a great job of like breaking it down, and he could explain like there are certain times when eating out was like really important. Like culturally, we were being hosted by a family that owned a local restaurant. And so he would say, we're going to go and we're going to eat here, and we're going to roll the fee, the cost for everybody, the group dinner into, this total cost. So you can see like when you're going to eat out in specific areas and how much that's going to cost. And you can kind of deduct that. The airfare was not included, so I knew I had to come up with that. And then, budgeting like on days when we're not having like, specific like eating times as a group or a cohort, how much I could spend, and I would budget maybe $10 to $15 a day and mostly eat at like grocery stores. I'd go to local markets and get food. And so, and then like certain times when folks wanted to eat out, I could say I could do that maybe once every other day, and so kind of budgeting that out. And so what I decided to do was take out $5,000 in additional student loan aid. Those are subsidized student loans, so they didn't accrue interest while I was in school, but I knew that I was going to have to repay that. And so the additional loan amount would come to around $50 a month on that loan by itself for like the next 10 years, for example. So I knew that that was going to be my expense, and I had to kind of weigh the cost of it and whether or not my professional development or emotional and personal cultural development and academic development was going to be worth that investment. And I felt like it was. And so that's why I chose to make that decision, but I'm still paying on it.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to talk about how they're able to make it work? No. All right, we'll move on to the next question. Can you tell us what were some of the top outcomes you realized from your participation in your study abroad program that still impact you today? So you can think about anything from personal, professional, academic, kind of whatever. So some of the top outcomes that you felt like you gained as a result of your program.
Okay. Study abroad absolutely changed my entire life. And here's how. When studying in the Ireland program and while I was abroad in Glenclonkill, I was exposed to sean-nós singing, which is the old style of singing in the Irish language. I instantly knew that's what I wanted to do. And without going to Glenclonkill was my first fieldwork experience. So I ended up getting my master's degree in folklore and ethnomusicology. And I'm not sure that I would have got into the program had I not had that fieldwork experience. It's very unique for undergraduates to have that kind of experience. And Evergreen is unique in its pedagogical makeup to allow for these high impact practices. So yeah, going over there, having that experience led me to graduate school, and now I serve on the executive board of Comhaltas Ceoltóirí Éireann, which is an international Irish music organization that's headquartered out of Dublin. I'm the All Canada sean-nós Singing Champion as of August, and like, I'm constantly in communication with people in Ireland and Scotland, learning the Irish language, doing minority language advocacy, and performing this music. And yeah, it's pretty much my whole life right now is doing Irish language work and folk music work, and I would not have been able to do this without the program.
Wow, thank you. It's hard to follow that, but does anybody else have any ways that they see it's impacted? Yeah, Andy.
Well, me, it goes the same way. Is that basically the study abroad program? It almost like it didn't completely surprise me. It gave me the field biology stuff that I needed, but the one thing it actually did, it opened my eyes to know that there is still cultures out there that I can still live by the lifestyle where I can survive minimally, instead of just like, it gave me a new perspective on how do you use money the right way and how to use the economy the right way. And as a result, I actually, after gone through my field study abroad program, I actually ended up going to agroforestry, and where right now I'm working towards building a business where owning 2 farms. Along with the fact that I am going to, right now, I am actually in Phoenix Institute of Herbal Medicine, where I'm actually getting my herbal medicine degree with homeopathy, along with studying acupuncture, because I want to be able to like I want to be able to like do all the agroforestry stuff that I'm doing, but I'm going to provide it in the most affordable manner for people who are like living in these remote civilizations. And the one thing that I was lucky that right now I'm starting to develop is right now I'm working on my school curriculum, where I'm actually teaching, these are Assyrian people that came out of Iraq, and they're here in Phoenix, and that I actually went to their church. And it turns out they're people who are descendant of St. Thomas Christians. And so pretty much I'm actually right now working with the most Orthodox of all Christians. And now I'm like, I get to meet their Pope. I had to learn Assyrian. I got to learn what their culture is all about, their teaching is all about. And now I'm actually wanting to create a school where I want to bring Buddhists, Christians, Taoists, Hindus, almost like a lot of different people. And we all learn to live together in a commune. And it turns out like I'm pretty much drawn to the lifestyle of the Essenes in the old days. So pretty much that's where I'm heading right now with my degree and all the stuff I'm learning in study abroad.
Right, thank you. Sydney or Gail, do either of you want to tell us what some of your top outcomes were from study abroad?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Studying abroad really did, I mean, I know everyone has said this, but it really did change my life and just like what I was planning to do. Photography has been something that I've been doing for, I don't, too long now. But curation was not something that I saw myself really doing. I kind of spent my first 2 years at Evergreen learning storytelling and focusing a bit on how to tell my stories through my art. And I was more into this path of photojournalism. And that was a big portion in me going to study abroad, was to get some more photojournalism experience. And when I was over there, I got to see all of this art and see how it was displayed and kept and like preserved for years and years and years. And what an impact it made on everyone who saw it, and just the impact that some of it had made for lasting generations. It was insane. And so it really drew me to this idea of curation, and I ended up doing a internship my senior year with Photoland to do curation. I managed all of the gallery walls down there, and that was just this like huge eye-opening experience for me to be like, oh, I want to do that. And I, with my photography, I'm ended up moving away from photojournalism and just realizing that I just really liked showcasing people. And a lot of the work that I do is inspired by Greek mythology and by old art. And I do a lot of work with florals, which was a big prominent thing in both Greece and Italian history. And just seeing like the art there was ridiculously inspiring in the art that I would continue to make after that. It's still things that I reference to this day. I still go back. I have like a journal from the whole time that we were studying abroad, and I still go back and like reference the paintings that I was seeing in some of the art that I'm making today. So that was the biggest thing for me, was just seeing the impact that art can make in the world, and the lasting effect that it can have on people, and realizing that that was something that I could also play a part in.
Oh, it's amazing to hear all these ways that study abroad have impacted. I mean, it's part of your education, but how this part of your education impacted where you are now. All right, so we'll move on to the next question. Unless Sydney, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I can just say something real quick. We covered a lot of bases. But yeah, I think like one of the biggest realizations for me are just like outcomes. Like it was very much so more personal than academic or professional. It just like gave me a lot of confidence, and it just showed me that I could like build a life for myself like anywhere. Because you know, like you leave and you go off to school and make friends and everything, but to like go to a whole different country, and like I built a schedule for myself. I found things to do, places I like to go, and like explored, and even like traveled on weekends throughout Europe, like, and planned those trips. And so yeah, it definitely gave me a lot of confidence in myself, and like really proved to myself that I could get myself anywhere I wanted to go. And you know, I'm going to carry that forever with myself and that's why I'm like here in New York, because I like had that experience and I was like, I can go to New York, it's no problem, let's go guys. So yeah, I'm super appreciative of that experience.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I remember coming back from my study abroad. I studied Spanish, and when I came back, I was like, oh, I can do presentations now. Like they're in English. I can, you know, that's my first language, no problem. So it really helped build my confidence too. All right, next question. Can you talk about your social identities while abroad? How did they change, if they did? What did you notice? Did anything surprise you about your relationship with your social identities? So anybody is free to take this one.
I'm happy to start this one off. I realized how much I value my alone time when I was abroad. I don't know if this was the case with all of the study abroads, but my study abroad was very jam-packed. We had like a daily schedule that was very much like we were doing this, and this every single day. You are walking, you are doing miles, like you're doing a lot. And you're with, I mean, I was there with, I think about 35 other students from my program. So it was a lot of people. And especially when we were in Greece, we were all staying in just like one hotel, basically. Like as we moved around, it was just all 35 of you are in this one hotel. And, you know, you got to choose your roommate. I was with like someone who is still one of my best friends to this day. But it's not like you're going to be close with your entire class. I would love for that to be the case, but just from my own experiences, that was not ever really the case with any class that I had. And so spending, you know, 6 weeks with the same people daily was a lot. And I really had to realize that I couldn't go out. Like a lot of my friends would want to go out to a bar or out, you know, like to explore on our like rest days. And I just was burnt out. Like we were doing so much that I really realized that I needed those rest days to just like have some time away from my class and like some time to just chill by myself, which can be really hard when you're in this space that you're abroad and you're like, I need to be seeing everything. I need to be moving all the time because I'm not going to get to maybe do this again. And it was a really hard choice to sometimes make, of being like, my body cannot take any more of this. I need to take the time to like chill out right now, even if that means I might miss seeing this one thing that I was kind of excited to see. But yeah, so my social identity definitely changed when I was abroad. I realized that I was much more not a going out person the whole time I was there. But it was nice to realize that and recognize that I was okay with just spending some time by myself and having that time alone.
Sounds like you were able to learn how to practice some good self-care in an environment that you weren't used to. So that's great. Anybody else want to talk about how there are social identities and how they changed or didn't change while they were abroad? Yeah, Andy?
Well, for me, I actually started to become more like myself as an immigrant more. Like I know that most people don't know that that prior to coming to America, my mother and father are actually raised as Southern Vietnamese immigrants who actually are very nationalist. They're very capitalist by definition. So because of that background, and I spent time in like a low income country like Panama, it actually changes my understanding of like family, tradition, survival. And so I started to care more about like, ever since the day that I went to Evergreen, where I met some of my classmates who just like, oh, family doesn't matter. We can live alone. Oh, we can just support ourselves. As I went over into Panama, or to even now going to the Assyrian community, family means everything right now. Family got me to where I am. I started to know like I had to set aside my anger and differences with my mother and father a lot because I go to study abroad. And I started to understand that I'm not much different from them. And so pretty much like right now, because of that, I'm still the Buddhist man I am. I still carry on my forefathers' tradition. But the one thing is that I started to talk to people that are from a different culture than I am. But at least we learned to start sitting together. We start treating each other like family more. And that's when I like for the first time, I start to eat together with people who are from a different tradition. I can call them my cousin or my brothers and sisters. Although I just can't say the same whenever I go back to Evergreen. That's the only thing that I felt like as time goes by, I just like, I used to think Evergreen was my place, but then after studying abroad, now end up in Arizona, I'm just pretty much like, I'm moving away from it.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to say anything about their social identities before we move on to the, oh yeah, Genevieve.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think the way that gender is navigated in other countries is an important thing to touch on. As a cis hetero woman, being abroad, you know, people had certain expectations of me in that, performing my cis hetero womanness in Ireland. I was just back in September and, staying with a woman in her 50s, and it was all about like, oh, you're single. What lads, what lads are you going to be meeting, and all of that. And, but, there were trans students in my class when I was over, and for them, navigating gender in a country which in 2010 did not recognize transness, that was an experience for them to go through. And I can't really say much about what they experienced, but that was something that I noticed about people in my community when we were abroad. That's something that they needed to navigate and figure out how they were going to be in a place that was not at the time recognizing their identity. What else? Also, being the Yank, being the Yank in Ireland is definitely a thing. And having to be the expert on Americanness while you are abroad. Like a few people mentioned, being a cultural ambassador And you really are, because just like we go abroad to learn about other people and the way that other people live, when we go to a place, the locals are really wanting to know about our lives back home and the way that we do things. And so it's not a one-sided interaction. And I think that's important for us to remember as well. Like, we are also educating while we are being educated, and that self-awareness is important to carry forward. So that's what I'll say about that.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to think about not just what we're getting from the community and kind of from this like consumerist perspective, but that it is the best international education is reciprocal, right? All right. Unless anybody else wants to say anything about that, we'll move on to the last question, which everybody can answer. So just any words of wisdom for students thinking about studying abroad. And again, I'll start with Avery because you're on my right.
I think, expect the unexpected, try to plan as much as possible and go in with an openness too, there are a lot of things that you have to do in planning wise in order to navigate systems, legal systems, and in order to like actually, go abroad. And I think learning that process and being really hands-on with your process is really important because it's a great like learning opportunity. And then, I think just like what, Sydney was talking about, especially too with like, and also Gail, you really can't predict how your body and your like emotional self is going to respond to being like exposed to a variety of different circumstances, a fast pace, like a high academic rigor in a new environment outside of a classroom structure. And then also, it's like culture shock is real and it happens to everybody differently, and it's really hard to predict. And be kind to yourself and check in with the people that you're traveling with too. Folks, I noticed that like I was very maybe too bubbly for, and too excited, and I was just like trying to take everything in as much as possible because I was never sure when I was going to be able to come back, and it was overwhelming for folks. And I recognized that and took a step back and asked them what they needed from me, if they needed me to support them in any way and they needed to stay back then not go out, and that was really just check in with folks, and you never know like how people are doing, how people are responding, look after each other, be safe. It's a wonderful experience. You plan and as much as possible, and then be open to a lot of different, opportunities and experiences.
Great, thank you. Andy, you want to go next?
Sure, and this one will really hit people in the face. So number one thing I will tell people straight up is treat your study abroad program and the culture you're going to be living with is like as though you're on a date. You're being married to the new culture. Your goal is to try to understand and to relate to the art culture. So set your freaking ego aside. Do not let your assumption about the art culture get to you, because at the end of the day, if just like in a date, if you judge them by your standards, they're going to misunderstand you, and it won't go very well for you. So that's how you basically learn to live with our culture. And the thing is, that's just going to be normal. I will get along with some people in Panama. I will get with others. And I happen to like the Nassau tribe. I happen to love minority groups. I love living around people who make money, have businesses, but at the end of the day, they use it to support their families. But because of all this, I actually had not only a cultural dialogue with them, which they actually learned a lot about Chinese culture from where I came from. But now I'm actually here in Phoenix. I actually ran across the Assyrian culture. Now we have both an intercultural and an interfaith dialogue. I'm Buddhist and they're Christian. They're Orthodox. And now I'm talking to them and we both understand each other. It was all because of study abroad. It's because I started to learn to set aside who I am and set aside what makes me assume what a Christian should act. And so pretty much now I'm starting to make progress where both sides actually understand each other. And that's going to be part of the norm. If you don't know how to set aside your egos, you might want to second guess about wanting to go study abroad.
Thank you so much. I'm going to steal that. Treat study abroad like a marriage from here on out. Thank you.
And it's an arranged marriage too. So you
Yeah.
pace yourself to go in there. So pretty much if you screw up, guess what will happen? They will, the abroad culture will actually come back and tell their whole family, oh, this American dude is actually acting so arrogant. I think the American culture themselves are so arrogant. They're going to stop. That's like a bad relationship, and they're not going to send their whole family over to America anymore.
Yep.
That's part of what even Chinese culture like myself would do. We represent the culture. We need to be good representatives. Otherwise, people will look down on you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, Gail, words of wisdom.
Let's see. I think my biggest one would just be to listen to your body the whole time that you're there. Listen to it when it's telling you that it is tired and it needs a break. Listen to it when it says no more, because it will have a day where it's just like, no, we're not doing anything. And it's really important that you learn to listen to that, especially when you're in just somewhere that isn't your home and you can't just take your own normal comforts. My second thing would be to keep a journal if that's something that like you are into doing, because part of this was like, I have 2 journals here in front of me that, again, I said earlier, I reference them all the time, but like one of them was one that like we had to keep for class, like it was like a daily thing. So that's kind of cool to look at and see just like from a class perspective what I was doing. But then I also kept a personal journal that has like pictures that I took in it and just like things that my memory is not great. And so when I look back at them and I'm like, oh, that's right, I did this on that day, or like I went here. It's such a fun thing to like look back on and remember. Take lots of pictures, do all of the things that you can to like ingrain this in your mind, because as someone with a shitty memory, I don't remember half of my study abroad until I look at those pictures and look at my journal. So do that.
Thank you. All right, Sydney.
I think I would say like just like say yes to everything. Like any opportunity that comes up. There was multiple things that I remember like just being really unsure about, and I'd call my parents and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, and it was just every time I would just end up saying yes, and it would be the exact opposite I think it was going to be. And like I would just like every day when I left my house, I would just like have a backpack packed with like water, money, whatever, walking shoes, and then I just like wouldn't know when I would come home. And like if you just say yes to everything, you end up in really cool places that you wouldn't imagine yourself in.
I think that's like the rule of improv, right? As you say yes. All right, Genevieve, you want to finish us off?
Sure, yeah. I would say start saving early. You know, I was a work study student when I was going through this program, and I needed to live off of beans and rice for a long time and put money away so I could go on the trip. Another thing, I want to second Gail's recommendation of keeping a journal and writing in it every day. That was super valuable for me. I think a lot of study abroad programs ask you to write a paper after you come back. That journal is going to be so valuable for writing your paper, especially if it's a long one, which a lot of these are. Like, I think we needed to do a 25-page ethnography paper coming back. And at the time, I'd never written anything that length. And having a journal of basically field notes of my experience made it so much easier. Also, be prepared for there to be conflict between your classmates. Like, if you're going to be living together for that long and you're around each other 24 hours a day for a month, 6 weeks, conflict is going to happen. And, you know, so anticipate that and go into it with grace, recognizing that everyone is in a new environment that's going to cause all sorts of stresses that aren't a part of your normal life. And, you know, it's a reality of study abroad. So as great as study abroad is, these moments are going to happen. Be prepared for them. And I feel like I had one more. That might be it for now. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for this great conversation. Yeah, it's just helps kind of bring the whole experience to life. So for any of those who are watching the recording, if you have any questions about study abroad at Evergreen, feel free to contact us, Seel and I, at studyabroad@evergreen.edu. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great day.